On the first day when the curse of frailty took effect, as expected, Yona's body began to weaken, and, by the time they realized that there was something strange about the crystal, Azura had already retrieved all the crystals and taken them to the city hall. On the second day, Yona's eyes began to lose their light. After entering another day, Hajin then asked Suho if there was still no movement from the city hall. Suho replied no, they were hiding inside, not moving at all. On the third day, Yona was even difficult to just stand up, and after a week, when Nayun was feeding Yona with porridge, she then felt worried because Yona could not even swallow the porridge now. Seeing Yona's face that was very pale like a corpse, they were confused about what to do. They realized, if this continued, her life could really be threatened. After Suho returned from his reconnaissance, he then brought back bad news. Today was also unlucky, no one came out of the city hall. In the past few days, Hajin had guessed what Azura were planning. They gathered all the crystals and barricaded themselves in the city hall. He did not expect that the Azura would take a different approach from the original story. They knew that one of them was dying, so, if they did not want Yona to die, Azura knew that they would inevitably have to come to them, amidst the gloomy atmosphere that engulfed them. Jonghak then said that they had no choice now. With anger on his face, he said they only needed to give what they wanted. Yonghan was initially a little confused by what he was talking about, but he then realized. He asked him, "Do you mean we will break into the city hall?" Yonghan seemed to somewhat disagree with that. They only had 4 people, while Azura himself had a large army. Hearing that, Hajin said that part shouldn't be a problem. Yonghan was then confused hearing that. Hajin explained, "When all the crystals are concentrated in one place, the past will become unstable. As a result, the residents, the clone beings from the past, will also be weakened." That meant only about 100 of their 200 people could actually fight, and of those, only about 10, including the Azura, were a threat. With the 4 of them including himself, Hajin felt that there was no one they couldn't fight. His explanation seemed to reassure Yonghan and ease his worries, in contrast to Yonghan's worries. Nayun said even if they had 200 people, it really didn't mean anything. She was really very angry right now. She felt like she could kill them all alone. Although Hajin's explanation did give them hope, but Suho realized that the problem was, although Suho didn't finish his words, but Hajin knew what he meant, they couldn't leave Yona here alone. There was a possibility that she would be targeted. Someone had to stay here and protect her, until they defeated the cursed sorcerer who cursed her. Bringing Yona to the battlefield was obviously impossible to do, so, Hajin was confused about what they should do, but, in the midst of his confusion, he suddenly remembered something. He then took out the bag containing the mana crystal that they managed to steal. Hajin seemed to have thought of a plan that could break their current deadlock by using it. He then immediately told them that he would protect the crystal as well as Yona. They were then surprised to hear that. Their surprise was not strange, because they did not know how many enemies would come, so it was a dangerous action, but Hajin still insisted. He convinced them and said that he had a motorcycle, so, if the situation worsened, he could take Yona away. Considering the situation, this was the best choice for them. Hajin then asked their opinion about it. Suho was silent for a moment. With a sad look, Suho confirmed that he couldn't think of a better way than this. Yonghan was the same, so he could only agree. He asked, "We will move at night, right?" He asked them to make sure they were prepared, but, in the middle of their discussion, there seemed to be something strange about Jonghak. An extremely terrifying aura enveloped his surroundings at the moment. Jonghak was furious when he thought of the person who made them in the current situation. He promised to tear him apart. Time passed. When night finally came, they then began to move. While on the way, Nayun then saw the grass around her withering. She wondered, was this what he meant by the past is losing its strength? After walking for a while, Suho then stopped, looking at the building that was more like ruins in front of him. He then said, "The city hall is right up ahead, but no one's coming out at all." Suho realized, since they were already this close, they must have realized their current existence. Hearing that, Yonghan felt that this looked like a blatant trap. Amidst their doubts whether to directly break into the city hall, someone suddenly appeared on the bus in front of them. They immediately became alert when they saw it, and it was not just one person, rather there was a group of people who surrounded them at this time. A man at the front who was most likely the leader of the siege told them that this was a forbidden area for children. With a look of disdain, he asked, "What brought you here, kids?" Seeing the man, they recognized him. Hajin had told them about the man. he was the right hand of Azura, Yu Dongsik. Seeing him blocking their way, Jonghak fearlessly told him to get lost. They were here to meet Azura. He told him to tell his whereabouts. Hearing that, Yu Dongsik was still calm. He didn't seem angry at all. He felt that he was a bit rude for a kid. With a mocking smile, he then asked them, what if Azura wasn't here? Jonghak was annoyed to hear that. He realized that asking him was useless, so he decided to use violence. Jonghak then prepared and coated his spear with a terrible aura like a demon. Yu Dongsik was surprised when he saw the color of the mana he released. This was the first time for him to see mana with such a color. After releasing the terrible mana and coating his entire body with it, Jonghak told him to bring Azura here, and attack him using his spear. The spear attack was strong enough to force Yu Dongsik to move away. Yu Dongsik was quite amazed when he saw his attack. Seeing his attack that destroyed the building behind him, he admitted that he was quite strong, but he apologized to him. He was not lying, their boss was really not here. Jonghak was then upset to hear that. He told him not to mess with him and tell him his whereabouts, but Jonghak immediately got a guess that made the anxiety in his heart peak. Seeing that, Yu Dongsik asked, you left the crystal right, along with the injured one, what gave you the confidence to leave them both behind? Hearing that, they already suspected that their base would be targeted, but what they did not expect was that Azura herself went there. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Yonghan then told them that they had to go back as soon as possible, but, just as he was about to turn around and leave, someone suddenly intercepted him, and to make matters worse, they were now surrounded by a group of armed men. Jonghak was really angry about it, while Nayan himself was very anxious at the moment. He was confused about what they should do, if they didn't go back immediately. He was worried that Yona and Hajin would, but, in the midst of the tense situation they were facing, Suho, who had not shown any signs of worry, suddenly burst out laughing at this time. They were then shocked and confused at that. Nayun even wondered if he was crazy. Not only them, Yu Dongsik was also confused when he saw him laughing. He asked if he had lost his mind. Why was he laughing? Suho did not answer and just smiled when he saw his confusion, with the mistletoe in his hand. Suho then slowly moved forward and asked, you're saying your boss went there alone, right? Meanwhile at the camp where they lived, Hajin smiled when he saw a mysterious man walking towards him. He seemed to have been waiting for this. Hajin did not feel worried at all even though he would face a Jin alone. He had set a trap there, and waiting for Azura, who was looking for a mana crystal, to come to him, and as expected, she was baited. Azura laughed dismissively when she saw that there was only one person there. Seeing Hajin who was about to face Azura, Yona then called out to Hajin, with a pale face and difficulty even just talking. Yona asked him to just leave her alone and get out of there as soon as possible. Hearing that, Hajin was silent for a moment. He then turned to her and smiled. He told her not to worry, there was nothing to be afraid of. Not only Hajin, Suho also smiled and told them not to worry, everything would be fine. He also told them a surprising fact. Hajin was stronger than him. Looking at Hajin who was sitting in front of him and the bag he was holding, Azura thought, as the spirit told me, that person does have crystal fragments, and plus, there are dying people he has to protect. Azura smiled at the thought. He felt that this mission was too easy. In a condescending tone, Azura said that he was really a pathetic human being. This was the reason why he threw away his humanity. He refused to be chained by a meaningless burden like him. Hearing that, with a flat face, Hajin answered half-hearted. He asked him, so, did you come here alone? Azura was silent for a moment hearing his question. Azura coughed for a moment to correct his attitude. He said that he was not alone, he had an army. Hajin was certainly confused to hear that, because he did not see anyone other than him. Azura said that he was not lying. He really had an army of more than 2,000 people, but Hajin didn't seem to believe his words. He felt that he was just talking big. Anyone could say that. With a mocking smile, Hajin said if it was like that, he also had thousands of golden cows in his house. Hajin felt that people today lied that easily. He laughed out loud when he said that. Azura was certainly annoyed and angry at his mockery. He was really angry with his brash attitude and how dare he mock him like that. While releasing a powerful reddish mana, Azura said that he would teach him a lesson. Azura mobilized his mana and formed several portals. Shortly after that, inside the portal, a monster appeared that slowly came out from inside, but Hajin showed no signs of nervousness at all. He already knew that this was Azura's unique ability. the power to sacrifice his own mana to summon creatures from the demon realm, the tide of demonic beasts. Azura was now surrounded by monstrous creatures that came out of the portals he formed and formed a kind of army ready to fight to the death for him. When Hajin was preparing to face Azura, he suddenly heard Yona calling him. In a weak tone, Yona asked him to just leave her and run away from here as soon as possible. Hearing that, Hajin then calmed her down and told her not to worry. He assured her that this would end soon. Hajin said that it would be fine and told her to just rest. Hearing that, Yona apologized to him, and said that she was counting on him. Right after she said that, Yona then couldn't support her body anymore and decided to continue resting, while Yona was resting behind him. Hajin himself was preparing to face the enemy in front of him. He then used his stigma's mana to release ether and changed the Desert Eagle's form into a rifle. With increased damage brought by the ether, he was able to increase the inherent attack power of his Desert Eagle. Plus, he didn't need to use any stamina or mana at all, he only needed to use his finger to pull the trigger. In addition, he then used recognition to further increase the damage of his Desert Eagle, and how happy he was. When he saw the number 44% on the system screen, he felt like he had hit the jackpot, but Hajin didn't stop there. He then put a little of his stigma's mana into the crystal, and right after that, a very powerful aura was then emitted which centered from him. The aura was so powerful that it made the surrounding rocks fly and made the nearby trees almost uprooted. Hajin looked very satisfied to see that. The aura he emitted earlier changed the terrain around them. He was now completely ready to face the beast army summoned by Azura. Azura himself looked surprised at what he did. He was surprised to see him knowing how to use the crystal of the past, but he didn't feel panicked at all. Even though he changed the terrain, he felt that it wouldn't change anything. Hearing that, with a big smile that seemed to say that he was wrong, Hajin said that it would make a lot of difference. Seeing her friend struggling alone while she herself was helpless to do anything, Yona then recalled her past. Hunting dogs, it was the name that people gave her family as an insult, but Yona didn't care what they thought. She silently told them to laugh as much as they wanted. In the end, they would all kneel before her. But, in order for that to work, Yona realized that she had to succeed and bring honor to her family name. It was a dream that she had to achieve alone. Yona felt that maybe that was also the reason why those memories flowed back in her mind when she saw Hajin from behind. See, Hajin who faced the beasts alone, Yona was like looking at her old self, who carried everything alone. Seeing the beasts charging towards him did not make Hajin flinch. He then calmly pulled the trigger and made the beasts unable to get close to him at all. Seeing Hajin's shots that did not miss in the slightest and hit right at their weak points, Yona was amazed. He made a formation that could not be surrounded, while attacking the weak points of the incoming beasts meticulously. The waves of incoming demons, which had flooded him like powerful waves in the ocean, now disappeared like foam. None of their attacks hit him or could even get close to him. It's a flawless shooting technique. Yona suddenly got a strange feeling. She was confused as to why she suddenly felt warm, but she then figured it out shortly after. So, this is how it feels if there is someone protecting me. It feels good. This is a feeling that is quite foreign to Yona. Meanwhile, in front of the city hall, Suho's group was facing Yu Dong-sik and his entourage at the moment. Seeing Yu Dong-sik and several armed men standing in his way, Suho then swung the mistletoe. It was not an ordinary swing, even from a long distance. Some of the men beside Yu Dong-sik were thrown away when hit by the impact of his sword swing, but Yu Dong-sik showed no signs of panic or nervousness when he saw that. He just looked at him while putting a small smile on his face. Seeing that, Suho wasted no time and immediately rushed forward to attack him, but the slashes that Suho threw could be easily blocked by him. Yu Dong-sik did not plan to just defend against him. He then counterattacked, and the clash created by the clash of their attacks then caused a powerful shockwave around them. In the midst of the clash of their attacks, Yu Dong-sik suddenly asked him if he was telling the truth earlier. Suho was certainly confused to hear that. Yu Dong-sik asked, "Is the man who stayed behind is really stronger than you?" Suho smiled at his question. He said that he was not a person who liked to lie. Hearing that, Yu Dong-sik then guessed that he often sparred with him, but Suho said that they had only sparred once. Yu Dong-sik was then surprised at his unexpected answer, but their attention was then immediately distracted when they heard various screams behind them. The men brought by Yu Dong-sik screamed in pain when someone attacked them strongly. The attack was so strong and fast that immediately fell them in one attack. It was certainly Shin Jonghak's doing. he was so strong compared to the extras like them. The scene looked like a one-sided massacre done by him. Seeing that, Yu Dong-sik asked if that person was as strong as him. Soho didn't answer, he just laughed when he heard his question. Yu Dong-sik felt that he could not relax now, the people he brought were strong enough. But he was able to slaughter them so easily, he felt that their strategy had fallen apart now. Seeing Yu Dong-sik who drove towards him and threw attacks at him, Soho then calmly parried his attack. He said that it wasn't too late, they didn't need to fight, he was just being used by the jinn. But Yu Dong-sik wasn't affected by his words at all. He said that it didn't matter, in times like this, might is justice. The impact of their clash was strong enough that Soho was forced to retreat backwards. Hearing his words earlier made Soho realize that he couldn't solve this problem with just words, so, he decided to focus fully on his fight with Yu Dong-sik. Soho coated Mistiltine with his golden mana and prepared to face him. Seeing that, Yu Dong-sik didn't look panicked or scared, instead, he looked interested. He seemed to be able to see the specialty of the tree branch in his hand. He said that he was really hiding something interesting. He also felt that it was time to stop this game. Yu Dong-sik suddenly threw away the large iron that he used as his weapon, but the strangeness didn't stop there. His whole body suddenly shook violently, and his body that had been the size of an adult, suddenly showed signs of enlarging. Soho, whose height was not so far from him earlier, suddenly looked so small at this time, with a form like a small giant. Yu Dongxian said that he would also show his trump card. When he first saw Hajin, to be honest, he didn't feel a strong presence from him. He thought this was just the last struggle of a cornered rat, that's what he originally thought, so, he was confused by what he saw at this moment. As a flying beast approached him, and was about to shoot liquid from its mouth, Hajin was quite surprised, but, he didn't feel panicked at all. He then once again used his stigma's mana, and shot the flying beast dead with one shot. But Hajin didn't stop there, he continued to shoot forward and kill the beasts summoned by Azura. Azura was certainly shocked when he saw that. This really didn't make sense to him. She couldn't believe how could even after he summoned this huge demonic beast army, he still couldn't touch him. Looking at Hajin's body that was still free of wounds, let alone touch him, the beasts didn't even seem to be able to get close to him. Azura was completely disbelieved by the level of destructive power and reaction speed that Hajin showed. He seemed to be able to see the movement trajectory of the beasts he summoned very clearly. Looking at the beast army that couldn't even get close to Hajin, Azura was confused. He couldn't find an opening when he reloaded the magazines. He also realized that if he let it continue like this, his troops would be wiped out before he could defeat him. While Azura was dizzy thinking of a solution to this problem, he was then surprised when Hajin suddenly complained about the number of them. He seemed to be referring to the beast army that Azura summoned. The reason why he could do this, was he already fused with the spirit. He was confused about what his goal was, whether it was revenge, or wealth and power, but, after thinking about it for a moment, Hajin felt that it was not important. He then returned to aiming his rifle at Azura. Seeing that, Azura immediately put on a vigilant attitude, and again enveloped himself with the beast army. Hajin felt that thinking about it would not change anything, and he then pulled the trigger again, but, in contrast to the sound of the bullet that he expected, only silence was what he got. Hajin was then surprised by that. He didn't seem to expect it at all. Not only Hajin, Azura and his beast army were also surprised as if petrified when they saw it, realizing that the bullets in his gun had run out. Hajin then fumbled in his pocket to look for a magazine, but, unfortunately, the bullets in the magazine had run out. Even so, Hajin did not seem to lose his composure. He then said to Azura, "Do you know, surprisingly, I don't hate you at all, I even understand you a little. You probably have no other choice but to take this decision to get stronger." Azura could only feel confused at his words. The reason why Azura, no, more precisely Chunhua, became a jinn was simple. Looking at Hajin who was just staring blankly at the magazine, Azura then realized something. He smiled at that. He was originally curious what nonsense he would come out with, but as it turned out, he had run out of bullets, even though Azura had discovered that. But Hajin didn't seem to panic at all. He didn't blame Azura for his actions and even felt a little sorry for him. Azura being like this was because that was how he wrote him to be. No backstory, no depth to the story. He was just another tool to provide development for the protagonist. Hearing Azura who thought that he had run out of bullets, Hajin calmly told him that he still had plenty. He also told him, no matter what kind of life he lived, his story would end here. Azura did not feel at all intimidated by his words and thought that he was just stalling for time. He also asked him, what could he do with an empty magazine? Thinking that he had won, Azura then ordered his beast army to attack him and tear him apart, but, as if slapped by reality, his beast army was slaughtered once again by Hajin's gun which he thought had run out of bullets. Azura, he couldn't even be called a villain. Seeing the beast army protecting him slowly being slaughtered, Azura seemed to be able to feel his approaching death. He's just an extra character that gives growth to the protagonist. That's how cliché stories work. While aiming his gun at him, Hajin was also thinking, and maybe, as the writer, I feel a little guilty about it, but, just before Hajin was about to pull the trigger, he suddenly heard Nayeon's voice shouting for him. She asked if he was still alive. Seeing them coming, Hajin then raised his hand to greet them. He also said that Yona was safe. When Azura looked back, he then immediately became panicked when he saw so many people coming from there. He also saw people who used to be his subordinates like Yu Dong-sik. He was confused why they were here. His subordinates were also as surprised as he was when he saw him successfully defeated by Hajin. They really didn't expect it. While clenching his hands tightly, Azura inwardly cursed. He wondered if they betrayed him. He really couldn't think of a way to get out of his current situation. He had already spent so much time and mana just to face one person. He really couldn't think of how he could win. But, in the midst of his despair, Azura was then surprised and panicked when he felt the movement of something in his heart. It seemed to be trying to get out of his body. Azura was very desperate to face it and frantically said that he still needed it, but, his plea seemed not to be heard. The horrible aura that enveloped his thickened, which then turned into a terrible spirit or wraith. They were then shocked when they witnessed it and the wraith that was now approaching towards them. Seeing something with such a terrible form, Yonghan wondered if it was a wraith. Seeing their shock and confusion, Hajin then immediately calmed them down. He told them not to worry. The wraith was not a threat. He then called Suho. Hearing that, Suho knew what he meant. Mistiltine has the ability to absorb souls and become stronger, so, Suho then touched the wraith with a tree branch in his hand, and chanted for fun, abracadabra. Right after that, the presence and aura of the wraith that was so gripping was immediately purified and absorbed into Mistiltine. Now, that wraith will stay with Kim Suho forever within Mistiltine. After the main threat in this episode was finally eliminated, Hajin then tiredly rested his body. He didn't know how Suho managed to convince people in the past, but at least the ending was still similar to the one in the original story. Although his body was fine, but mentally exhausted after endlessly fighting in the past few days, Hajin could only feel bitter about it. He then opened the system that had been connected to his smartwatch, but, he was then shocked when he got various notifications from the system. Due to his slaughter of the demonic beast army summoned by Azura using his gun, his master sharpshooter proficiency has now increased dramatically and has risen to grade 5. Not only that, his luck exploded. For having exterminated thousands of demonic beasts with the dark attribute, Ether has gained increased understanding of the dark attribute. He also gained 330 SP after being seen in this episode. Hajin was certainly very happy to read these notifications. He even felt that his fatigue was gone now. Master Sharpshooter reaching grade 5 is certainly good, but the attribute understanding that's now been added to Ether will definitely have effects on the Desert Eagle as well. The power itself may not be as strong as directly investing SP in it, but, while Hajin was immersed in pleasure due to the growth of his power, he then realized something. Seeing Nayeon who was looking at him with an unhappy look, Hajin confusedly asked why she was looking at him like that, but, Nayeon's confusion was even stronger than him. She asked him if he thought this situation made sense. What Nayeon meant was about him changing the terrain and slaughtering the demonic beast army that the Azura summoned alone. Not only Nayeon, Jonghak and others also seemed to be surprised when they saw the corpses of demonic beasts scattered there, but, as if not understanding what she meant, Hajin casually said that they would soon disappear since their mana link was broken. Nayeon then got annoyed seeing Hajin not grasping what she meant. Nayeon sighed for a moment. With a slightly blushing face, she said that he had made her feel embarrassed for worrying about him in vain. Hajin could only be silent without knowing what to react to hearing that. With a sour face, Hajin said that he had already told her that this was his talent related to firearms. While showing his rifle, Hajin said that everything was thanks to this. Seeing the rifle that was so dazzling, Nayeon amazedly asked, "What is this?" Not only Nayeon, Yonghan also looked amazed when he saw the rifle. Hajin explained, "This time round, I was just a really bad match for Azura, compared to swinging a sword 2,000 times. It's easier and more effective to kill a large number of weak enemies by just pulling the trigger 2,000 times. While listening to his explanation, they marveled at his rifle. Even Jonghak was no exception. Hajin then remembered something. He turned to Kim Suho and asked if he brought the crystals. Suho confirmed it. He then took out the crystals that were in his pants pocket and handed them to him. Seeing that, Yonghan then asked if they were going back now, but Hajin replied no. Instead, he said that they had to put these crystals back to their original position. Yonghan was then surprised and confused to hear that. Suho was the same. He confusedly asked, "Why do we need to do that?" Hajin explained, "Have you forgotten that this place is basically a gift from nature since it's not affected by the time of reality? We can train effectively here. Let's stay here for 2 more weeks." Nayeon's eyes lit up hearing that. She seemed to really agree with his proposal. After that, Hajin then looked back and asked them, "And, right now, we also have way more people that we can duel against, right?" Realizing that the people Hajin meant were them, Yu Dong-sik and his gang could only laugh awkwardly.